Hey, welcome to the show. This is Amazing FBA. I'm your host, Michael, and we have some exciting stuff to talk about today. First of all, just a quick one to say that the private label process course is now available from December the 6th, 7th, roughly, maybe even sooner. It's going to be available in its pretty complete form at full price, £395, 500 US dollars, which is pretty cheap considering how thorough that is and the results it gets for people compared to many courses out there that are 8 to 10 times the price. So it's thorough and great value. That's the basic reason to buy it. And if you want to get hold of that, then you're wise to move fast, because before December the 1st, midnight UK time, you can get it for £100 off. Plus, if you're one of the first 10 people, if there are any spaces left, I think there are 2 or 3 now, one of the first people to go for that, then you get a 1-hour mentoring call with me absolutely free, where we can check your product research, your sourcing plan, and make sure your documents are in place, or your niche, your launch plan, I should say. So that's basically what's on offer. If that interests you, great. If you do or do not want to know about that, either which way, we're going to talk about sourcing today. So in the last episode, we dealt with the whole thing of the overview of sourcing and how it fits into an overall picture. So you can't build great sourcing, you can't build a great business without great sourcing, for sure, but great sourcing won't save you from lousy product research. So that's also true for the overall business building picture. I wouldn't suggest you go straight in with a private label product. I think there are very easy ways to get in there and test out ways of learning your skills on Amazon without going in so deep first time out. So that's one of the main differences between my own approach and the Amazing FBA private label process approach, I think, and what else is out there. So let's talk about sourcing step by step. We talked about the overview last time. The main thing with sourcing from China is it's easy to get lots of possible suppliers from Alibaba.com, and the main focus needs to be on filtering people out. So elimination, not adding, right? So it's a little bit different. If you're sourcing in the UK or USA or Europe, then okay, you've got to find the relevant suppliers. That is the job. Finding things is the job. In China, the job is eliminating things. So let's talk about Alibaba and how we go about that. First of all, remember, it's FAST. Fuse is my abbreviation. FAST is find all suppliers today, and then Fuse is filter what do I call it? Filter unnecessary or unsuitable suppliers and eliminate. So fast Fuse. Fast is find all suppliers today, and you can start eliminating before you even find them by using the filters on Alibaba. Here's what I do. Gold supplier. It doesn't mean that much, just to be clear. It means they've been paying to be advertising, and they may have been around for a while, but it filters things out. They're people who are at least serious about Alibaba. Assessed supplier, that means that they have checked, Alibaba's formed some kind of check that the company exists, that there is a factory. And escrow, which means that the factories are willing to hold things in escrow. So basically you send the money to an escrow center, the factory sends products there, and then if both parties are happy, then it moves on. I've never used escrow, by the way. I'm not suggesting you do, but it's a way of eliminating suppliers if you've got too many. If you've got not enough, you get rid of the filters. Okay, so you filter if you put, for example, copper bracelet for women into Alibaba and you have 10,000 responses, you want to filter it down. If you end up with 100 responses and then you filter it down using escrow and you have 2, then you've gone too far with filtering, right? So it's a question of reducing things to manageable proportions. So that's the first and easiest way to filter things out. The second thing is I would dig for value, and that means research maybe 4 or 5 main keywords. So it depend on just one keyword. So if you're looking for copper bracelet for women for arthritis with magnets in, I would think things like copper bracelet, bracelet with magnets, magnetic bracelets, bracelet copper. Those are the obvious things that would occur to me to look for. The second point, I would start on page 5 or upwards, page 10, because people who are on page 1 are probably paying for the privilege of being there. Just like if you're on page 1 for Amazon to start with anyway, it's going to be because you're spending a lot of money on marketing, and that means you've got to pass that cost on to consumers at some point. And the same is true on Alibaba for suppliers. So page 5, page 10, etc. It's the good old Google hack. If you're looking for something, what you want to find is people who are very, very good at manufacturing, but not great at marketing themselves, because they'll be in need of your business. Prices will be more reasonable, and also they're more likely to be responsive. Similar thing also if you got people with under 200 employees, they're going to be more responsive. The best deals probably come with people between about 50 and 200 employees in their factories, and you can see a lot of that information on Alibaba as well. Another thing you want to look for is obviously great photos or low prices. Low prices I would always be wary of because it can imply low quality, but sometimes if they're buried in the weeds of page 15 or 20 of the Alibaba.com search results, then they may have low prices because they're desperate for business, right? In which case that's what you absolutely want. People who know how to make widgets but don't know how to market themselves. That's absolutely what we're after. So those are other ways that you can dig deeper for value and find value more quickly. And then the next thing we want to do is long list suppliers by the criteria on Alibaba. So if the photos look good, the prices look decent and sort of close to what you want, and the MOQs, the minimum order quantities, look doable. A word about prices and minimum order quantities. The price that is quoted on Alibaba is not going to be the price you end up with after negotiation. I would say, rule of thumb, you can get at least 50% down depending on the quantities. Minimum order quantities, you're going to get a lot lower in my experience. Again, you can't generalize accurately, but a rule of thumb would be if it says minimum order quantity 1,000 pieces or PCS, that means units is what they tend to say in China, then you can probably get it down to about 20% of that in some cases, not necessarily lower and not necessarily in all cases. But, so in other words, if you're shopping and you think that your target selling price is about $20 and you want to be roughly a total landed cost therefore of about a quarter of that, maybe a third maximum, then you're targeting about $5 total landed cost. So you're probably looking at maybe $4 manufacturing cost or whatever. And these are rough rules of thumb and we'll refine that as we go. But if you find something that looks really suitable and it's on at $9, and you think you can sell 100 a month and therefore you want about 300 and it says MOQ 1,000, I wouldn't dismiss that because I think that minimum order quantity could probably be reduced by negotiation and the price as well can be played with. So don't eliminate too quickly on the basis of price and MOQ. But that said, if the price is way too high and the MOQ minimum order quantity is way too high, then you can eliminate those as well. So that's Alibaba itself. And that's hopefully eliminated quite a few possible suppliers and left ones that are good. The next thing is then to filter unsuitable suppliers and eliminate them via the email response. And I would use email rather than go through the Alibaba system because, again, it looks a bit more serious if you go through your own system. I would suggest that you set up a separate email account for this because it's going to get full of spam. It does look a bit more professional if it's from your own business account. If you can set it up with Gmail, it's about $3 a month to set up a new user on Gmail. So it's very, very good value. And you can have it your domain. I'm not going to tell you all the nuts and bolts of that. I mean, look on Fiverr and hire somebody if you can't figure it out. It's an easy thing to get somebody to do. But basically, you could have something like sourcing at yourcompany.com, or if in doubt, just keep it simple and just have yourcompany.com yourcompany at gmail.com, right? So free, simple to use, free Gmail address. Either's okay, just make sure you have a separate email address because it will get filled with spam, right? That's my main hint there. So you are going to contact quite a lot of people, not crazy numbers because you'll drive yourself nuts. Hopefully you filtered it down to, I don't know, 20, 30 to 50 suppliers maximum. You're going to contact them. That doesn't mean you're going to get 20 replies. If you email 50 people, you won't get 50 replies. You'll get, I don't know what, 10, 20 replies. So that's the first filtering point. Have they actually replied to you? The second filtering point is if you ask them 2 or 3 simple questions and they don't answer them, then that's not good either. Now, caveat here, if you go in with the traditional contact email and you ask them 8 questions, then they're not likely to respond because they're going to be overwhelmed with questions from thousands of people, and you're taking their time up with a billion details when they have no idea whether you're serious or not. So ask simple questions. The other hint is don't ask what's your minimum order quantity because that just tells them that you're a cheapskate person that's going to buy very small amounts of quantity from them. Now, initially, that's probably the truth, but think bigger and bolder, and you are wanting to build a serious business. If this product takes off, you're going to want to sell as much of it as you can get your hands on, right? Because Amazon is an amazing selling machine, as they say in that course of that name. It is true. So therefore, you want an amazing supplying machine, which is a factory in China. So give that signal from the beginning. You're not committing yourself by asking how many they can make, how many fit in a container, what their production capacity is. You're not committing yourself to buying 10,000 widgets first time out, but you are sending the signals that you're the kind of person that does that. So I would just stick to something simple, the Will Chernin formula, as I call it, because Will shared it a couple of times in the podcast, which is simply ask the supplier something like, hello, I'm interested in widget X. How many fit in a standard 20-foot shipping container, and what is the price per unit at that quantity? Thank you very much, love, Will, or, best wishes, Michael, whatever you want to write. Dead simple, 2 questions. How many fit in a container, and what's the price per unit? And you should probably say, what's the price FOB for free on board? We'll talk about what that means, but stick to standard things, but keep it very, very simple. What's the price X works, EXW? 2 simple questions, right? If they can't answer those simple questions, then they're probably not serious. You can eliminate them. If their English is really poor, also, it's going to make communication very difficult. Don't be ridiculous about this. It's the second language to them. They need to be good at making widgets, not writing essays, right? But having said that, if you're going to struggle to get clear communication, that is absolutely critical. Clarity, not beauty of language, but clarity is critical. If you get the feeling after going back and forth a few times that you're not communicating, just eliminate them. And lastly, I think if they won't jump on WeChat or Skype for a text chat, I'm not suggesting you phone them there. Their spoken English is irrelevant. But if they're not willing to go back and forth that way, they normally are, by the way, but if they're not, then you can filter them out. So out of, say, 50 people you write to, you might have 5,000 initial unfiltered results on Alibaba. You use the filters, maybe get it down to 500. You pick through page 5 to 10 and find the things that look suitable. Maybe you got 50 potential people you write to. You write to those guys, maybe 20 of them write back to you. You go through these things. You're probably down to between 3 and 10 possible suppliers now. So you're going to go back through those, look at the products, check the product spec a little bit. But here's the next crucial step. Most people, as I've said before, I'll say again, that most people make an absolutely critical mistake. The first mistake they make in contacting suppliers is coming across as a cheapskate. What's your minimum order quantity? Don't ask for that. That's like somebody coming to me and saying, what's the cheapest possible form of coaching that you offer? If I see that email versus a bunch of other emails from people who are seriously committed to developing themselves and their business and are willing to pay proper money for a serious help with a serious business, I'm obviously going to prioritize those. So that's the first error. The second error that people make that we've just talked about is writing a massive long first email. Keep it simple, keep it short. Can't emphasize that enough. And if they don't respond, then just follow up because they're busy. Follow up 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Just click resend. Don't be complicated. Just keep it simple. The other big mistake, though, people make at this stage when they're interested in a product and a supplier is they go back and forth and try and negotiate on something before they've seen the product. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's not even worth talking about a product unless you know of its good quality. So get a sample. The second reason that's important, and again, I can't emphasize this enough, you need to show some commitment to the supplier for them to commit to you. And what I mean by commitment is you're not committed to buying thousands or even hundreds of units, but you're committed to a negotiation process, the end of which may be, I'm going to walk away because this widget isn't going to work for me economically. Right? Or the supplier may walk away because you're not going to be worth selling, just 50 units to or whatever. But the point is to commit to that process, put some money down, pay for a sample. That eliminates a lot of things very quickly because a lot of samples will turn up and they'll be rubbish or mediocre. Do not even consider buying those at any cost. It's not worth the stress on Amazon. Done. Okay, so that eliminates that. So label them, make sure you have clear points of comparison, rank them, think about the features, the quality, be a little bit scientific about this and structured. Also, by this stage, you should order samples as part of your market research. You should have ordered samples already of your competition or your potential competition. So if you haven't done that, make sure you do that. If you're selling into America and the products also sold in the UK, just order them from the UK, same kind of products. You may have to even get products shipped across from the USA to you if you really want to check out the competition. Again, if you skimp on your market research, you'll get what you deserve. So don't. It's a bit of money. It's not a lot in the wider scheme of things. Research done thoroughly gives you a really solid basis. Okay, so when you get your samples from the supplier, you want to compare them to what else is out there from Amazon and also what else is in the marketplace generally. So spend some money getting to know the products. Now, if you've done what I always suggest, the simplest marketing strategy is be your own target market. You'll have this stuff around. For example, if I wanted to private label microphones, okay, electronics from China could be challenging, but at least I've got several microphones that I've used around. I could compare any samples I got sent with this, and I could use it in my normal everyday real life as well. So once we got the samples, it's very simple. If the sample quality is too low compared to what else is out there in the marketplace, or if your initial reaction when you open the package is, oh, this is rubbish, just dismiss it. And that includes how they package things. So you see, the best way to judge people isn't what they say, but what they do. Actions speak louder than words, like lots louder. If your supplier says lots of nice things and is charming and you know, sends you lots of Skype chats with little emojis and stuff, but they package their products badly, that's probably what you're going to get at scale, because this is them sending you a sample for $80 and they're trying to win your business. Or at least if they're not, you don't want to work with them. But if they are, and the best they can do is send you a badly packaged product that's rubbish, it ain't going to get better. So immediately dismiss them. Yeah, do not fall in love with something just because something else about it seemed nice. If the product's rubbish, it's rubbish. That's it. Again, that's not so common, but it does happen. I can't emphasize enough. You don't want a rubbish product at any price at all. Cheap is not enough, because you can't compete on Amazon with the Chinese suppliers cheap anyway. So there's a lot of suppliers now deal direct with Amazon, and they do Amazon Basics or whatever, sell themselves on Amazon. You cannot compete with that. Do not go for that. So the criteria then for selecting a supplier are pretty simple. A quality product above all, absolutely critical. If possible, they're a production capability specialist. In other words, if making your product requires folding metal and that kind of protection ability, and that's what they specialize in doing. For example, if you're making a microphone stand light or microphone stand holder thing, can't even think what you call it, or a music stand, for example, that, you know, there would be two products that I personally know from background as a musician that I've used hundreds of them over my life, if not thousands, and as a podcaster, I've used a lot of equipment over the last 3 years. I would source potentially a music stand that's made of foldable bits of metal and a folding holder for a microphone from the same factory, because it involves the same technology. Whereas if you're getting a music stand light, I would go to lighting specialists, and I would also do that for the light that I'm using for the podcast as well. So don't think so much in terms of consumer categories as production categories. Now, you can go very deep in this. This is very specialist stuff, but I mean, just keep it simple. If it involves folding metal or ceramics or glassware or plastic molding, injection molding or something, these are basic things you can get your head around fairly quickly. And if your factory doesn't specialize in those, it's a bit questionable. Okay. And then if possible, and this is a slightly different take on it, if they have related products for future expansion, that's good as well. It's a nice bonus. I think the quality is absolutely everything, and their specialism and expertise is very, very important. But it's nice to have the possibility of future expansion. So, assuming your quality of sample is very, very good and that these guys seem to know what they're doing, you can do some more due diligence on them. If you're going to do private labeling and order lots of money from them, you probably should. I'm not going to go into that here, but you can do international credit checks and all kinds of things if you really want to. But assessed supplier on Alibaba should be enough reassurance for most things. So then we're going to move on to the next step, which is to negotiate the price, quantities, design, and freight, and that sort of stuff. The most important thing here is, as we've said before, you're going to measure twice, cut once. So you're going to look at your profit and loss projection, and make sure that you really thought through all the possible costs in the supply chain, from the manufacturing, including packaging, inserts, if you're going to put something in that says, hi, if you like our product, then let us know, or do not ask for positive reviews, by the way. But join our VIP club for bonuses. Go to this email address, yourcompany.com/bonus, or warranty activation is a good old one. We've all used those; they work quite well. So that stuff. So you're going to have an insert card. You've got to get it. Packaged, you've got to get it freighted across from China to USA or wherever you're going. You've got to get it inspected potentially in China and potentially in USA as well. So all of that stuff, you need to have a list of all the possible processes it should go through, and you should construct with discussions and negotiation at each of those stages the profit and loss projection. Only then can you go back to your supplier and, knowing what your overall costs are, negotiate on the manufacturing costs and everything else, right? So it's a chicken and egg thing. You need to go through the whole process on paper and discuss with freight forwarder if you're using one, or discuss with a prep center if you're using one, the costs, and then you need to go over everything with your supplier in terms of the cost of the actual product, the packaging, etc., 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 and then construct your profit and loss. Right now, a starting point for your profit and loss is Keystone, which is a traditional retail formula. I would say the landed cost, probably the total landed cost, and a reminder what a total landed cost is, just to remind you, it's everything it costs to get it to Amazon, basically. So the manufacturing cost, packaging, freight, duty and taxes, and import costs. Don't forget to calculate those as well. The idealized Keystone formula consists of sort of 4 quarters. Real life version is probably a bit different from that, but broadly speaking, you want to land your product, the total landed cost, of about a quarter of your expected selling price. If you're expecting to sell something for £20 or $20, you want to land it for about $5 or £5. The sales and fulfillment cost should be about £5, and then advertising about £5, and the rest is profit. In real life, your landed cost probably should aim to be maximum a quarter, because your sales and fulfillment costs on Amazon can often be more like 30-40%, but you want your advertising cost to be lower as well. So you want to get yourself eventually ranking on Amazon organically, mostly, in a little bit of advertising cost. Okay, so that gives you then a target buy price. So after all of your work creating a projected profit and loss, it's there primarily at this stage, at the sourcing stage, to give you a negotiation tool, which is, I've done all our costs and I need to buy this widget at $4 out of the factory, plus freight and everything else. So I need you to sell it to me for $4 manufacturing cost, or I'm walking away. And you don't need to say that up front. You have to have that figure in your head. The next thing in negotiation is to get straight in there and negotiate on the price by starting off with a low price and say, okay, I want $3, and if we get $3, we'll commit on our next order to 10,000 units or something. Okay, so you can have a bit of a quid pro quo. You can have, I'll concede this if you give me this kind of conversation. Normally they'll start off at a higher price, you'll start off at a low price, and you meet somewhere in the middle. And where you end up meeting in the middle, the relationship between that, let's say, for example, if you start off saying, I want $2.50 a unit, and your supplier says, no, the price is $8, and you say, okay, look, I'll do $3 if you throw in the inserts. And they'll say, okay, look, we can do $5 best price. And then you say, okay, you know what, we're going to have to walk away if we can't get it for $4. We've got competition, your competition, in other words, some other supplier is offering us this widget at $3.50. We don't like the quality as much, and we prefer to work with you, but we need it at $4. And then they either say yes or no at that point. So that's more or less how I would play it. Negotiation is a complex art, and we might do a separate podcast all about that soon, because I think it's something I've got a lot of experience in. I enjoy, weirdly enough. I really like negotiation. It's a fun game, but you've got to understand how the game's played, and you get better with practice, like anything else. I've just done a lot of negotiation in my life. There you go. So I'm not going to get into the detail, but going in knowing your numbers is absolutely critical, and that's what most of my focus is these days, plus having an alternative supplier. With those two things in place, you are in a good position. If you don't know your numbers, you have no idea whether your negotiation was a good or a bad result. Okay, so I can't stress enough, you've got to know your numbers. You must know your numbers. If you're not comfortable with that, get somebody involved who is. You can double check it with you. A coach can be really helpful at this point in preparing you for really professional negotiation if somebody's been there before. So at this point, then, if you've negotiated a deal that suits you, and that includes not just the price, but the design features, the freight, most of the time I would suggest that you get your supplier to arrange freight via Air Express, which means UPS, DHL, or FedEx, one of the main courier companies. They normally have a lot of volume that goes through their account with UPS or whoever, so therefore, for that reason, they will get a better deal than you or I can. If you want to double check that you're not getting ripped off, just open your own UPS or DHL account and ask for a quote, right? Very quick, very easy to do. And then the other thing to negotiate is not just about the price, but the terms, the payment terms, the cash flow, very important. So the standard thing for a large private label order or any large order is you pay 30% upfront as a deposit, then they then go and manufacture the goods, and then you pay 70% on successful completion at the other end of manufacture. Normally, if it's a private label or a large order, dependent on them successfully passing quality control inspection, which is really critical. And I would only skip that for a small order under $1,000 worth. Even then, you know, Rob and I have done that in the past and regretted it because it still takes time to sort out the mess that results the other end. So broadly speaking, I will always inspect, all right? So that's the deal, and that needs to be negotiated as well. If you're making your payment of the balance dependent on inspection being completed, you need to be very meticulous with that. And I'll probably do a separate podcast about quality control because it's a really involved topic, so you need to get it right. So anyway, once you've agreed all that stuff in your negotiation, then you need to set out various documents. So you need to have a document flow. You need to get a pro forma invoice, which pro forma meaning this is a draft basically from your supplier saying, here's what you're going to get, here's what it costs, here are the payment terms. You need to double check that and go back to them, and if it's wrong, check that or renegotiate it. When it's right, you send them a purchase order, which is your formal commitment to actually buying stuff. Then they send you a commercial invoice, which is their formal invoice, and this is a very important document. You need to double check that. I mean, triple, quadruple check it. Any details on there that aren't right could cause a problem with your freight, because the commercial invoice is a very important document for getting products through customs. So that's really important as well. And then you need to you basically pay them. At that point, you get a commercial invoice, then you need to pay them money, and at that point then they need to acknowledge receipt of the money and then start manufacturing. And at that point you need to pester them regularly, probably once a week, until they don't get an update, in other words, and then you need to get an inspector in. When that's done, then you start receiving the order, or rather your freight, what do you call it, your inspection company or prep center in the US will probably receive it first time, and then Amazon receives it. You get notifications about that. It's ready for sale. And then you launch, then you're into launch phase, and during the period when it's being manufactured, you're absolutely critical that you use that time to prepare for your launch in all ways. You might be reaching out to influencers, you might be creating your marketing plan on Amazon with spreadsheets and clear goals, and keyword research is absolutely critical as well. And we'll talk about that in a separate place. We'll do another podcast about that. So the whole business of sourcing takes time and effort. Timescales wise, you're looking at between 8 weeks and 20 weeks or more. If it's a private label product, more complex, you're more ambitious to change things, it'll take longer. Don't forget Chinese New Year, which means in February basically China shuts down for a month, or the factories effectively do, so you've got to take account of that as well. So the order of events is that the deposit gets received, manufacturing starts, you get 6 weeks or so, or whatever it is, depending on whether you're air freighting, which I advise for a first product, or sea shipping, you might get up to 3 months there, in order to get your test launch or your launch plan in place. You have to do your quality control inspection. It departs the factory, it arrives at the prep center, leaves the prep center, enters the Amazon fulfillment center, is prepped by FBA, and is ready to sell. So that's the order of events that happens next. So overall timescale, as I say, about 21 weeks, something like that, 20 weeks. A typical time scale, if you're being reasonably quick and not complicated, of say 8 weeks, would be something like this. You put the deposit down and it's received within 2 to 3 days. Manufacturing starts. About 3 weeks later, your stuff is inspected, and assuming it passes inspection, gets put on a plane by UPS, FedEx, etc. It will arrive at the prep center hopefully between 3 and 7 days later. The prep center, depending on the time of year, may be very busy. They may turn your stuff around quickly if it's a smaller shipment. It may take them 2 or 3 weeks if they're really, really stacked out for Christmas. Any longer than that, they're taking the mick. And again, you need to kind of stay on it and manage, delegate, don't abdicate. Stay on it in terms of keeping the process moving. So email them at least once a week, preferably with a prep center. I'd be emailing them daily after a week because they should turn things around within a week normally. And then it'll leave the prep center. That can take a few days, depending if it's in the USA, depending where it's going. That could take 7 days to get delivered to an Amazon FC fulfillment center, that is a warehouse. And then it can take between 24 and 48 hours in normal times to up to a week if you're unlucky, if it's around the Christmas period or pre-Christmas. October's a peak time, for example. And then it should be ready to sell again within 24, 48 hours of arriving at the fulfillment center. Again, it could be a few days if they're really, really busy. So that gives you an idea of the timescales. So we are, looking at quite a lot of detail. It sounds like a lot of work. Well, it is. It is a lot of work, but put it in context. Think about your day job. If you're wishing to replace your day job with an e-commerce based business, think about how many years it's taken you to learn that. I mean, for music, for me, it took me, I was kind of overqualified like a lot of musicians for the work I was doing, but I did a 4-year undergraduate degree that included a year of performing experience in Germany. I did a postgrad in French horn playing, and then I got into my day job with French horn playing and brass teaching. So that was 5 straight years of study and then experience. This one is going to take way less time and than that, and it's a much better investment in terms of the payoff financially than a degree. I have to say, I think I haven't got a degree. I'm glad I got one. It was interesting. I love music, but financially speaking, I would have been better off putting my money into property at the time, because Amazon didn't really exist in any investable way in the early 90s. But the other things, if you look at alternatives to your day job that you'll be considering building up, buying or renovating property or flipping property or buy and hold, whatever it is, that's going to cost you a lot of time and effort to buy the right property. And if you're doing it up, that's going to be months of really hard physical labor. But that's fine. It could be a good investment, but this is no different. It's real labor. If you're going to learn how to trade stocks and shares, you're going to have to really learn your craft, really, really learn it. I mean, that's a hard game to make money in. So whatever you do, it's going to take some money and a lot of work. So you have to just put it in context. And if you're looking for a quick buck, Amazon could deliver that, but it's not going to be private labeling. It's called retail arbitrage or online arbitrage. And if you're listening to this in Q4 still, if you're in November, December time, then you can make a killing selling toys and other such things, bath products, anything that's giftable can make a killing. If you want to make a quick buck, that's the way to do it. This is not about a quick buck. This is about a long-term sustainable business. So be willing to put the work in. And just to summarize here, if you really understand the first skill of getting the person and the pain, if you really, really take the trouble to deeply understand your customer, take the trouble meaning you make efforts, you talk to people in person, you join physical groups for people like, arthritis relief or whatever it is, or a sport or whatever you're into. And by the way, being your own best target market is always the easiest way to do that. If you then also dig around on forums online, if you are willing to join Facebook groups and hang around and observe, don't pester people to buy your stuff. That is not the point. It's to deeply understand the customer. All of that, if you go and buy the alternative products that people use and use them and ask people what they like and see for yourself what you like and what is missing, if you do all that trouble and then you get superb sourcing, the stuff we've been going through, if you take the trouble to find a really interesting product, you negotiate a good price that makes sense but is great quality, and you have quality control and you're fussy about quality from the beginning to the end of the process, then you can really beat the competition and build a winnable business. And people still do this now. People think that the Amazon game is over. It definitely is not. I know so many people who personally, they're not guru types, they're not even famous, who are making hundreds of thousands a month. It's not an easy game, it's a worthwhile game. It's what I would say. Again, you want quick money, Amazon can provide that. It's called retail arbitrage, online arbitrage. Private label is not quick wins, but it can be big wins. It can be very, very big wins if you take the trouble, okay? Next episode we're going to talk about in this series, celebrating the launch of the private label process, is going to be about launching. So when you finally got the product, how to create a launch plan that works. And the first thing to do is to create a really, really good listing. People used to think listings were about getting ahead of the game. Now it's just kind of entry level. You've got to create a fantastic listing in order to compete these days. But fortunately, there are some tried and trusted principles for doing that, which we'll go over in the next show. Like I say, if you want to learn more about the overall business building process and to check out Is Amazon for You, got a very short video. If you go to amazingfba.com/class, it's about an 8-minute video that talks about Amazon as a whole and my story as well, my experience with it. I'm not going to rehash that here, but it's definitely worth checking out if you want to do that. And then you can go on to videos that talk about sourcing in more detail. A lot of the material I've covered here, but with slides, which is a lot easier to make sense of. If you want to make sense of that, go to amazingfba.com/class and give us your email address there. And what we'll do there is we'll try and gear what emails we send you based on your behavior. So if you click on a lot of links about sourcing, then we'll send you more stuff about sourcing because you obviously need more about that. And if you're more interested in product research, we'll try and focus what we send you to be about that. So over time, our system should gradually learn what you need and give you more of what you need and less of what you don't. So we aim to serve you well even before you've paid us a penny. So if you never pay us any penny, which the vast majority of people never will, of course, we still aim to serve. That's what we're here for. So hope this has been of help, and go and be diligent about this stuff. If you half-ass it, you get what you deserve. If you do a thorough professional job, it will take time to build a business, and it will be a sustainable, profitable business. And that is what we're here to help people build. Thanks for listening. Speak to you in the next show.